everybody, it's Amanda, and it's Wednesday, and it's time for our next Bible study. We are today starting Matthew chapter 8, and we're going to go a little bit into chapter 9 as well. It's a lot of verses, so I'm just going to do it like I was doing it the last few times. By the way, if you haven't checked out the other Bible studies, I'll link you at the top to the Bible study playlist to make sure that you can check out all the other ones that came before this. So, but I'm going to take it piece by piece like I had done before. So let's go ahead and start in Matthew chapter 8, verse 1. It says, when he was come down from the mountain, great multitudes followed him. Now, of course, right there, Jesus had just finished the Sermon on the Mount, so he came down and people were following him. And it said, behold, there came a leper and worshipped him, saying, Lord, if thou wilt, thou canst make me clean. And Jesus put forth his hand and touched him, saying, I will, be thou clean. And immediately his leprosy was cleansed. And Jesus saith unto him, see thou tell no man, but go thy way, show thyself to the priest, and offer the gift that Moses commanded for a testimony unto them. And when Jesus entered into Capernaum, there came unto him a centurion, beseeching him, and saying, Lord, my servant lieth at home, sick of the palsy, grievously tormented. And Jesus saith unto him, I'll come and heal him. And the centurion answered and said, Lord, I am not worthy that thou shouldest come under my roof, but speak the word only, and my servant shall be healed. For I am a man under authority, having soldiers under me. And I say to this man, go, and he goeth, and to another, come, and he cometh, and to my servant, do this, and he doeth it. And when Jesus heard it, he marveled, and said to them that followed, verily I say unto you, I have not found so great faith, no, not in Israel. And I say unto you that many shall come from the east and west, and shall sit down with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the children of the kingdom shall be cast out into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And Jesus said unto the centurion, go thy way, and as thou hast believed, so be it done unto thee. And his servant was healed in the selfsame hour. So we'll pause right there and just talk about these two stories that demonstrate, and these, all of the different portions that we're going to talk about today really deal a lot with faith and how our faith is, how faith here is available to be seen and how ours can be as well. So you have first, Jesus came down and he saw this man with leprosy. And I have to be honest with you, this is one of, it's a portion of the Bible that's preached on in one of my very favorite sermons that I've ever heard, and it's actually called Looking for the Wounded. And the preacher who preached that particular sermon talked about how Christ came and he was on this road, and he's Christ and he knows, you know, who he's going to meet and who he's going to encounter. And he basically tells the story that Christ was looking for the wounded. And as you go through all of these different stories, you see that Christ is dealing with people who are wounded and struggling with both sin and physical ailments, and he heals them, right? So, but I love that sermon. And so I always think of that when I think about this particular story, when he approaches the Lord and he said, if thou wilt, thou canst make me clean. And that, first of all, he worshiped him. So we know that he recognized him as God. And then you see, he says, if you want to, you can make me clean. The faith that demonstrates, just that statement, is tremendous. You know, because I think a lot of times now people pray, but they don't have that same kind of faith. You know, and that's not a criticism. We all struggle with it if it's something that we really desire for the Lord to do in our lives. But this person that the Lord dealt with, this person had the faith that they truly trusted the Lord, and their faith he responded to and gave them exactly what they desired. So then you have the next story of the centurion, and his faith was so amazing that the Lord said he had not seen it, not even in Israel. Like, this was an amazing amount of faith, because he's like, you don't even need me to be there. You believe so much that you think I can just say it and it's done. And, you know, the Lord can do that. You know, the same words that spoke the world into being are the same words that can heal any kind of sickness that people have. But it's whether or not there's faith behind the question. You know, we just finished the whole ask, seek, knock thing. And I want to point out right now that I think there's this whole movement within Christianity that emphasizes healing. And we're going to talk as we go further that healing was part of Christ's ministry, and there's no doubt about that. But it wasn't the intent of his ministry. It was bigger than that. The healing that he was going to be doing was the healing from sin. So anyway, but I do want to mention that there is the faith aspect here, that they really trusted the Lord and approached him in faith, and he responded to that faith. So verse 14, it says, "And when Jesus was come into Peter's house, he saw his wife's mother laid and sick of a fever." By the way, Peter was married, had a mother-in-law. It says, "And he touched her hand, and the fever left her, and she arose and ministered unto them." So she was healed to the point, not just so that she arose, like she got out of her sick bed, but she was able to take care of people. So that was a significant healing. But it said, "When the even was come, they brought unto him many that were possessed with devils, and he cast out the spirits with his word, and healed all that were sick, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by Isaiah the prophet, saying, Himself took our infirmities and bare our sicknesses." Now, that comes from Isaiah chapter 53, verses 1 through 4. So I'm going to roll back real fast and we'll talk about this, because remember that we're in the book of Matthew, and I say it every time, and I'm going to say it again. Matthew is telling all of this for the purpose of reaching the Jews. It's reaching us too, but for the purpose of reaching the Jews. And so he's going back to the Old Testament, and he's talking about this prophecy that revealed who Christ was. And it says, Isaiah 53, verses 1 through 4 says, "Who hath believed our report? And to whom is the arm of the Lord revealed? For he shall grow up before him as a tender plant, and as a root out of a dry ground. He hath no form nor comeliness. And when we shall see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him. He is despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief." Now that particular portion is part of what we're talking about here. "And we hid, as it were, our faces from him. He was despised, and we esteemed him not. Surely he hath borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we did esteem him stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted." So all of those verses right there are kind of pointing to all these things that Matthew's been revealing about Christ, about how he was a tender plant and he's grown up in a dry place. And then he was acquainted with our griefs and our sorrows. And all of that kind of goes to this verse. It says, he took our infirmities, and that is the bodily sicknesses, took those away, and bodily illnesses, I should say is a better word, and bear our sicknesses, and that really references sorrows of the mind and even sinfulness. So just this idea, he's revealing through all of this that Christ is the Messiah. And even going back, you know, when you look at verse 10 here in this section, when he was talking about the centurion, and he said, "I haven't found so great a faith, not in Israel." And he points out here, Christ does, and also Matthew by telling the story, he says that lots of people who are not from the nation of Israel will sit down with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. The people from different places will trust in Christ, and they will be in heaven. And the Jewish people, if they neglected to trust him, would not. Because as it goes further, it says, "But the children of the kingdom shall be cast out into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth." So, I mean, it's very specific. You can see the goal of the different stories that he's using, and you can see how faith is at the root of all of these issues. So, verse 18 says, "Now, when Jesus saw great multitudes about him, he gave commandment to depart unto the other side. And a certain scribe came and said unto him, Master, I will follow thee whithersoever thou goest. And Jesus saith unto him, The foxes have holes, and the birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man hath not where to lay his head." So one of the scribes, people who are generally spoken of within the Bible as people who really didn't believe Christ, and we're going to read more about that in a second. But he says, "Listen, I'll follow you wherever you go." And I guess he was impressed by all of the healing and things that were happening. And Jesus hits him just as he does other people within the Bible. You can assume that he is hitting him with this these words, because this is what's going to be important to this particular person. And he's saying, "Listen, you're not going to have anywhere to lay your head. You can follow me but you're going to be giving up some things. And then we don't hear any more about this person. Then you have, it says, another of the disciples said unto him, Lord, suffer me first to go and bury my father. And Jesus said unto him, follow me, and let the dead bury their dead. So again, Christ is showing them that their priorities aren't where they ought to be. And I know you might think to yourself, that's kind of inconsiderate. Someone might need to bury their father. But think about how important it would be to spend time, if you had the opportunity to, with Christ on earth. And your father's already gone. I mean, that's significant. So, again, having the priority set, and again, I will say, all of it goes back to faith. If you really thought you were with Christ on earth, then you would yourself probably say, you know what, let the dead bury their dead. The Lord can handle that. My Father's already with him. I'm going to focus on my time with Christ right now. If you had the opportunity to follow Christ, would it even be a conversation about where you laid your head? Or would you just trust that he would handle those things? So, I mean, these are things that show a lack of faith in the lives of these other people. So, verse 23 says, and when he entered into a ship, his disciples followed him. And behold, there arose a great tempest in the sea, insomuch that the ship was covered with the waves. But he was asleep. And his disciples came to him and awoke him, saying, Lord, save us, we perish. And he saith unto them, why are ye fearful, O ye of little faith? Then he arose and rebuked the winds and the sea, and there was a great calm. But the men marveled, saying, what manner of man is this, that even the winds and the seas obey? So again, they seem to have a measure of faith, perhaps, because they went to him when things went wrong, and they were like, things are crazy, we're going to die. And he's like, why are you even worried? I'm right here. As though he wasn't already taking care of them and protecting them. So he handles it. And then you can even see, it says that men marveled at that. They were shocked. They're like, what kind of man does that? Well, the point is he wasn't man. He was man, but he was God. So this is all demonstrating Christ and his omnipotence. Very important. And also you kind of see his omnipresence when you see the centurion understanding that he didn't have to be in that one place. His word would go everywhere. So we do see the important aspects of God there. So verse 28 says, and when he was come to the other side into the country of the Gerasenes, there met him two possessed with devils, coming out of the tombs, exceeding fierce, so that no man might pass by the way. And behold, they cried out, saying, what have we to do with thee, Jesus, thou Son of God? Art thou come hither to torment us before the time? And there was a good way off from them a herd of many swine feeding. So the devils besought him, saying, if thou cast us out, suffer us to go away into the herd of swine. And he said unto them, go. And when they were come out, they went into the herd of swine, and behold, the whole herd of swine ran violently down a steep place into the sea, and perished in the waters. And they that had kept them fled, and went their ways into the city, and told everything, and what was befallen to the possessed of the devils. And behold, the whole city came out to meet Jesus. And when they saw him, they besought him that he would depart out of their coasts. So here you see so many different elements of faith or non-faith. You have Christ coming to this place where there are men possessed with devils, and the devils actually cry out to him. They recognize exactly who he is. They call him Jesus, thou Son of God. They know exactly who he was, and they recognized it audibly. And not only that, like the other two men at the beginning of the chapter, they asked Christ to do something for them, and he did it. Now, was that because they actually had faith, like saving faith? Absolutely not. They had knowledge, they understood who Christ was, but they didn't believe him or trust him. If they did, they wouldn't be in the position that they were in, obviously. So there's a verse, so I want to reference you guys back to James chapter 2, or I guess forward to James chapter 2. And it says, verse 19, it says, thou believest that there is one God, thou doest well. The devils also believe and tremble. But wilt thou Know, O vain man, that faith without works is dead. So that kind of, I think, clears up this whole confusion about them understanding that he was Christ but not actually having faith. They believe who he is because they know who he is, but they don't believe in him. They don't trust him. And I think sometimes we need to recognize it's not just a matter of believing Christ is who he is. That's good, but that's not all. We need to believe him, trust in him, and that will manifest itself by our behavior, our works, by how we live, and all those things. So that's why we can look at these stories and we can see from the life of the leper, from the life of the centurion, we can see evidence of their faith because of the things that they're doing. We can see from the scribe who Christ responded to, we can see from the man who didn't want to bury his father that they lacked faith. So the question is, how is our faith manifesting itself? So, and you can also see from, so Christ did respond, the devils asked him something, and Christ apparently felt it was best to go ahead and give them their way because it still ended up with their destruction. But the people who had kept the swine ran and told everybody in the city what had happened, and the people of the city asked Christ to leave. Can you imagine? But apparently they didn't trust him either. They had no faith in him as well. So even though there was evidence by the men not having devils in them anymore, the people did not actually trust him in who he was, that he was God. They didn't trust him to do good. So we're just going to move in the beginning of chapter 9. It says, "And he entered into a ship and passed over and came into his own city. And behold, they brought to him a man sick of the palsy, lying in a bed. And Jesus, seeing their faith, said unto the sick of the palsy, Son, be of good cheer. Thy sins be forgiven thee. And behold, certain of the scribes said within themselves, This man blasphemeth. And Jesus, knowing their thoughts, said, Wherefore think ye evil in your hearts? For whether is easier to say, Thy sins be forgiven thee, or say, Arise and walk, but that ye may know that the Son of Man hath power on earth to forgive sins, then saith he to the sick of the palsy, Arise, take up thy bed, and go into thine own house. And he arose and departed to his house. But when the multitude saw it, they marveled and glorified God, which had given such power unto men." So here we have kind of the crux of the situation, the difference between faith and those who don't believe. So you had the scribes, and the scribes had to be very knowledgeable of who God was. And they were following Christ. They were actually in his presence, seeing all these things happen. So they had to understand that he had the power to heal. And they didn't object to him healing him physically. They had no problem with that. The problem came when he started to reveal himself as God and say that this man's sins were forgiven him. That's where they took issue with it. And Christ had already explained himself. He's like, what does it matter if I'm healing someone physically or if I say their sins are forgiven thee? Obviously, I could only do either of these things if I were God. And remember, again, we're still in the book of Matthew, and Matthew's still explaining to the Jews. So all of these stories, going back to that whole prophecy that Isaiah had, all of these are just kind of building up and showing you this demonstration of faith and how all of these things have already been prophesied a long time ago and are pointing to Christ as the Messiah. And as the Messiah, they need to recognize not only did he have the power to physically heal, but he also had the power to take away sin, which is why he came. It says Luke 19:10 that the Son of Man came to seek and to save that which was lost. That was his entire intention. Remember I said this whole passage was Christ was looking for the wounded? It's the idea that, he didn't just go random places. He knew where he was going to go down this road and see the leper. And he knew when he was going to Capernaum that he would see the centurion. He knew every single place that he needed to go. He went down the mountain. He went on the boat. He specifically went and saw the men in the tombs. And then he entered into a ship and passed over and came to his own city. He's traveling these different places. He's doing it intentionally. It wasn't a matter of accident. The Lord had a very specific plan. And he's going all of these places to show the people the power that he has to heal and to forgive sin. And Matthew's recording it here in the New Testament for the Jews and for us. So that's where we have to really pause and reflect and say, do I really know Christ as Savior? Do I really, because I think people spend a lot of time wanting physical healing. But like the scribes, maybe we don't trust him enough to actually be God, to be the Savior. Because, trusting him to give you the physical healing also means that you trust him even if he doesn't. Which is a hard thing to say, but it's just the truth. Because all of us know as we sit here that there are people who don't get healing in the form that we expect them to get. Sometimes, we just had a good friend that passed away the other week. His family had prayed for healing for him, but the Lord felt that it was time to take him home. And we recognize his authority to do so because that is who he's God. And so ultimately, faith is going to be what is the connection between you and the Lord. It's by grace are you saved through faith. Not of works. The works aren't what save you, lest any man should boast. The works just demonstrate that faith. Again, that's why we can see, who believed and who didn't. So last time we talked about being doers of the word and not just hearers. We're being doers of the word, not because we're earning some kind of heaven. We can't do that. That's why Christ came. But it's just a demonstration of the faith that we have. It's just that outpouring of the fact that we do trust him and we do love him. And because of that, we're going to do what he would have us to do. So anyway, I'm going to stop right there. That's Matthew chapter 8 through 9:8. And we'll pick up and finish up chapter 9 next time. So thank you for coming to do the Bible study with me. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.